guys, I'm Kristen. Welcome and welcome back. Today I'm going to be doing a review for Foul Days by Genoveva Dimova. This is the first book in a fantasy duology by a debut author, and this series is called The Witch's Compendium of Monsters. The second book is already going to be coming out this October, Monstrous Nights. So if you're looking to pick up a witchy, monstrous, Slavic folklore-esque fantasy duology that you can finish already this year, look no further. So a quick little rundown for our synopsis here. In a moment of intense pressure, our pressure cooker situation, our main character, Kasara, who is a witch in a walled city of Chernigrad, trades her magic in exchange of, or in order to escape a monstrous, evil, and abusive ex-boyfriend. But when faced with the reality and the consequences of that loss of her magic, and when it becomes clear that this situation is tied into a larger scheme, she teams up with a very by-the-books copper from the monster-free fancy city outside of Chernigrad and tries to get her magic back. Without getting into any more specifics on the plot, I'm going to talk a little bit about my overall thoughts and feelings on the book, things that I liked, things that I wish had been done a little bit differently, and whether or not I think you should pick up or who this book might work for. If there's another book that you would like me to do a review for, let me know in the comments down below. Have you read this book? I'm very curious to see who has read this. It was a very anticipated release. This is a book that I saw in a lot of people's anticipated releases. However, I have not seen that many people talking about it yet. That being said, it is August at the time of filming this, and I do think this is a pretty good fall book. So I think it would be a totally valid choice if this book does strike your fancy, if you're thinking about picking this book up. It totally could be worth it to wait until like October, November. Things are a little bit spooky, it's a little bit more seasonal, and you can read both the first book and the second book if you enjoy this one back to back. And that would be a great idea, I think, for a more seasonal read in the later fall. So did I like this book? Overall, yes. I did really enjoy this book. It did get me hooked, or it had me turning the pages over the course of the book, but there was something missing, and I think that really heavy character readers are going to notice that while you might like our main character, you might like the side characters involved, we're not going as in-depth as I think there is the potential to explore the characterization of our main character, Kasara. In particular, she has definitely a lot of things that have happened in her past that are directly impacting the plot at the moment, as well as her reactions to things and things that she is holding on to. And I think that there was definitely a lot more room to explore further, to explore deeper. That would have made for a longer book. So a possible trade-off there. I think this was a pretty short book. I want to say under 400 pages. Yeah, 359 on Goodreads. So it is a quicker read, which again can be really nice sometimes. Definitely more characterization would have made this a longer book. I think that is a potential trade-off. Whether or not you are okay with the amount of characterization that is here is going to be a personal preference. I think the deep, really big character readers, as myself usually, are going to notice a little bit something missing here. The author left me wanting more. So perhaps we'll get a little bit more in the second book. I would be curious to see if that happens. I personally really enjoyed the dynamic between Kasara and our copper. He is very by the books. He definitely made me think a lot of Emmerich from the Little Thieves trilogy. If you are familiar with that series, I've mentioned it here one time or two before. And Kasara definitely gave me Vanya vibes. So if you like the dynamic between Vanya and Emmerich, I think you might enjoy the dynamic between Kasara and the copper, whose name I'm forgetting. And yes, she calls him or she refers to him as a copper. Think setting-wise here in terms of inspiration, they're referring gramophones as fancy modern technology, and electricity being a thing that is in only the fancy houses and where she's from, and that she was very surprised to find it everywhere in the big city. I did enjoy their dynamic, though. She referred to herself more as someone who is morally right, and our copper was someone who was technically right a lot of the time. So he was a by the books, followed the rules. She might cut some corners. She might do things that are a little bit questionable with the law, but that she felt had moral standing. And the two are paired up to try to figure out a particular mystery, a situation that is happening that is related to why Kasara was pressured to give up her shadow, which is the source of her magic. Kasara is a witch, and witches mostly live within this walled city. it is a city that is walled in to keep the monsters in. We're definitely dealing with a haves and have-nots kind of a situation with our walled in city of Chernigrad and the fancier city surrounding the area, and that socioeconomic situation is explored throughout the course of the book. Again, one could say more, but we're dealing with a 350 page book, so I think it was explored pretty well for the amount of page time that we had. If you like folklore elements, then that will definitely be at play here. There was also like a index or a glossary at the back where the author has provided like specific details for all of the monsters, or like not ghouls, but like the ghosts and things that are at play here. Elements of this definitely reminded me of The Bear and the Nightingale for that, like the house spirits kind of element, but done a little bit differently. It is low magic. Her shadow is the source of her magic, but it doesn't really go into exploring why, how come she's a witch and other people aren't, other than just that she is. It talked about a little bit about apprenticing, but it didn't really go big into in-depth for the magic system here. So if you're looking for that, this is definitely a low magic system. But overall, I thought the monsters, the folklore elements of that were unique and a very, in a fun way. I will say though, at the beginning of the book, it makes it seem like the foul days are like really, really scary, and everyone's like sitting, like waiting for the clock to strike midnight, absolutely terrified about what's about to happen. And then like over the course of the 12 days, people are just like going about doing their stuff. Better to say maybe that the author did a really good job of setting the scene in our opening scene with starting off this book. Like the foul days are about to begin, the monsters are about to start rampaging, and everyone is nervous, and you can feel that tense energy while they're trying to distract themselves. But then the period of 12 days happen, and it seems like everyone is just going about doing their own thing. They're not like locked into their houses the whole time. They're still out buying groceries. The hospitals are overrun, things are happening, but there was a little bit of a disconnect, a little bit of that didn't totally follow through on the amount of scariness, let's say, with the monsters as we progress through the book. So that was a little bit of a letdown in that regards. Overall, thematically, as I mentioned, there is some socioeconomic exploration here, the haves and the have-nots. There is some elements of crime at play. There is a difference between like being morally right and technically right, as our main two characters are sort of the archetypes for exploring that. We are also dealing with an abusive ex. So we have the situation of leaving an abusive situation, as well as the difficulty for someone realizing that they need to leave that situation, the concerns that a person might have with trust after the fact. So we do deal with a variety of those things. Again, this is a 350-page book, so we touch on all of those things in a way that I thought was very real, very believable, just not like super in depth here. We don't have a lot of page time, a lot of words to really get nitty-gritty into the details of those things, but I do think that it was explored pretty well. I was very satisfied. I do think that more characterization, again, could have been helpful. However, I will say that for me personally, at this moment in time in my reading, if it wasn't going to be like the perfect amount of character depth, I would rather it be lighter than have it be overwrought, where the whole book and every single sentence is the character being a little bit more in their head and thinking about all of the things. So I appreciated that we were able to spend more time setting things up. In terms of plot and pacing, the first 40% of the book followed a very like stepwise pattern where, pressure cooker situation happens. We then start to see the consequences of that magic, of the loss of the magic. We start tying in how it might be connected to a grander situation at play. And then we come up with the plan. We have to follow various steps in order to do the thing. So in order for the plan to be enacted, first we have to do this so that we can then do this. And then we can do this in order to do the plan. And then the remaining 60% was sort of like the rollout. I might have those two percentages mixed up, but either way, two different stepwise pattern, and then the rollout and execution of the plan and the consequences after the fact. In terms of romance, there is a potential romance here, but it is a very subplot. There are moments where it becomes relevant, but I appreciated that it didn't overtake our main character's thoughts. We were more focused on the plot and executing the plot and thematic content than we were our main character ruminating about our potential love interest. There was the occasion okay, fine, he was cute in this lighting, there were little thoughts like that where our main character was thinking about him, but it wasn't overtaking our main character's thought process when we were focused in on the plot. I think based on where we left off, I imagine that the romance will be more important and more relevant in the second book, but that is just a guess based on where we were. A personal thing that kind of irked me about the book was that both of our characters, this is only a single POV, but our copper guy is pretty important, but both of them have something like a situation in their past, a big mistake, let's say, that they have made, that they're really like carrying the weight for, that they regret a lot, and that they feel very responsible for that mistake that happened. When the two separate moments come that they share those mistakes, Kasara shares hers, and our cop guy is actually like very empathetic. He's very understanding of what happens. You know, he handles it really, really well, and that it wasn't actually her fault, that there was a bigger, broader situation that carried more of the responsibility than she was holding on to. However, when the tables are turned and it is our cop guy who is, I feel bad I don't remember his name, but when it's the cop guy's turn to share a mistake from his past, Kasara does not handle it anywhere near as empathetically as he did. She is very accusatory towards him. She makes him feel like crap. She makes him feel worse for the mistake that he made, to the extent that then he later apologizes to her for the mistake that he made in his past that has nothing to do with her. So I just was a little bit disappointed in our main character in that, and that it wasn't followed up with like, oh, actually, I wasn't as understanding to him as he was with my past mistakes. So that was something that like kind of irked me a little bit, and that we didn't follow it up with the fact that it was not the right reaction of hers to feel that way. It was like, you lied, and that is wrong. And lying wasn't part of her trauma, so I didn't really understand the intensity of that. It felt like a little bit more of like, not virtue signaling, but it felt like the author was saying like, this is wrong. And I just felt like he could have used a little bit more grace in that moment. But that's a personal thing that irked me a little bit. And perhaps it'll be addressed in the second book. I certainly hope so. Whether or not you should or shouldn't read this book, I think if you were looking for something that is going to set the tone a little bit, like a seasonal read in October, November, I think it would totally be worth picking this up if you go into it knowing that it might not have the amount of like deep dive character depth that you might be looking for. It's lacking a little bit there. Again, more words could be used for that. But I think if you're looking for like a quick duology that is interesting, that keeps you going, that has some monstrous like seasonal elements to it, I think this could be a really great book to pick up. I personally am really looking forward to reading Monstrous Nights. I feel like I'm actually more excited about where the book left off and where we might be going. We are dealing with a slightly different situation, but I hope that there is going to be more to explore between our main character and this copper guy. If you know, however, that you do want like a lot of character depth, if you don't want a variety of situations that are just touched on and you'd rather like one specific focus that has a deep dive, then this isn't necessarily the right book for you. I will leave it there. If you have read this book, let me know what you thought of it down in the comments below. If you plan to read it, or if you're going to be picking up Monstrous Nights as well, I certainly cannot wait for that release to happen in October. If you have any other books that you would like me, or new releases that you'd like me to review, let me know in the comments down below. And if you just want to let me know that you're here, leave a ghost emoji. Ghost? Yeah, leave a ghost emoji in the comments down below if you just want to let me know you're here, and I'll see you guys next time. Have a great day. Bye.